Stephen C. Productions.
You got to understand that in the beginning, you're not going to be good at this. And you should definitely give yourself permission and grace to be able to kind of get going. Embrace the suck. Know that in the beginning, it's not going to sound great. However, still have that awareness that you want to develop a taste to get good. See, what happens is people get stuck in the suckness, in the suckiness, and they never look to strive to get better.
You're listening to Talking from Experience. If you're an experienced listener, welcome back. And if you didn't know, you're about to learn. My name is Steven and I am your host. On Talking from Experience, I have casual, insightful, and entertaining conversations with community leaders, creative minds, and other interesting people from diverse facets of society. My goal with every conversation, aside from keeping you entertained, is to help you learn about the world through their experiences. Today, I'll be talking with Houston's very own Podfather, Ozeal Debastos. Ozeal is a coach, podcaster, creator, entrepreneur, and community leader. He's the founder of Pod Houston and Vid Houston. He also started Ozeal Media, where he coaches individuals and organizations to connect with audiences in the online space through digital content creation. We'll be talking about how he got started as a professional creator, the importance of connecting with others for personal and professional growth, as well as some of the positives and negatives of when a niche such as podcasting or creating YouTube videos goes from the fringes of society to becoming mainstream. Check it out. All right, the Podfather himself, Houston's own.
You just went right into it, Steven. I love it. You like the Podfather himself.
How many people call you that?
So I got that label. When was it? I think it was a couple of years ago. Somebody referred to me as the Podfather. I was like, I've never heard of someone called the Podfather, but I'll take it. That actually sounds pretty good. I'll take it. So I appreciate it, man. It's good to be here, Steven.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I've been wanting to have you on for a minute ever since I started this whole thing. You know, because I mean, you're one of the people that watching you, and I found your podcast after I found Pod Houston, and I was just like, man, like you're really out here practicing what you preach, so to speak. And I want to take the people back. When did you start doing podcasting?
I started podcasting a little over 10 years ago. And it was back when nobody knew what a podcast was. At that time, there was actually 2 video podcasts that were happening. One of them was called Mixergy and the other one was called Rise to the Top. And these were the first online video podcasts. They were definitely ahead of their time, happening during that time. And I was like, I could do this. I feel like I have the chops to be able to interview people. And I was just fascinated by the medium that I decided to start my own podcast. And from there, man, it's been, it's transformed into, my love for community building within the podcasting community, me now coaching other people to start their own podcast, as you know. And it's just been an awesome journey, man, being in the trenches for, a little over 10 years ago.
That's cool. Yeah, I feel like some people still don't know what a podcast is, really.
Well, man, so when I started, I remember we had to explain to people like, hey, this is where you have to it's an app and, you go here and, you leave a rating and review by clicking here. And you really had to coach people. And I think what it was kind of like the findability, right. So it's like, okay, podcast, great, but where can I find it? And it was really educating people on all the apps. But now, the knowledge is out there. As you know, podcasting is booming. It's a booming industry. And I feel like when it comes to finding where to listen to your podcast, people definitely know where to look now. I think discoverability is what's happening now. That's the challenge for podcasters. But I remember my mom back in the day was like, what is a podcast? I'm like, it's kind of like radio on demand. It's online radio and you can click this button and download. But now she listens to podcasts, man. So we've come a long way. Mom is listening to podcasts these days. So it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, definitely. What were you doing beforehand?
So before I started with podcasting, I was a front man for a couple of local bands performing all around town. And that's where I got involved with my love for the microphone and, performing in front of people. And I really enjoyed that. And from there, that's where I kind of got started with organizing local events as well. I was putting on concerts and local events for bands, within the same genre that we were in. And I really enjoyed building communities through the music that we were making with us and other bandmates, other bands in the city. And from there, man, it was just constantly just growing, learning about branding, learning about marketing as an indie musician. And then from there, when the last band broke up, I, discovered podcasting, and I was like, I really feel like this is something that I can do, and plus I've always had this fascination with interviewing other people. I've always had a curious mind to get people's stories and to be able to share stories. And I was like, I can do this. I feel like I can start this podcast thing and do it. And from there, started the podcast, as you know, and then started building communities around, of course, podcasting and everything involving content creation.
Well, what kind of genre were you playing?
Well, the first band I was in, it was alternative rock, where we're kind of like a mix of like Red Hot Chili Peppers meets Incubus, Rage Against the Machine, all that. It was a gumbo of all these different sounds and influences of bands that we grew up and really enjoyed. And then from there, I transitioned out of that, and we were more of like an alternative hip hop funk band. So yeah, man, we went from rock to like hip hop and funk, and we kind of everything in between.
Yeah, one of these days I'm gonna have to hear Buster Flow.
Oh man, hey dude, don't, yeah, man. I have stuff out there, and it was fun, man. I mean, I don't share this a lot, but you were talking about busting flows and being a front man. One of the things that taught me was really how to conduct the microphone. Like, it really helped me. I always look at like the podcast as your stage, and your audience is your listeners, right? You're on stage, you have people, and you're performing, right? Right now, we're performing for our audience, for your listeners. And I always feel like that was a good correlation between what we were doing as podcasters, but also connecting that with music and being on stage. So I feel like even flowing and being and writing songs and having that confidence behind the mic really helped me, as a podcaster, to be very confident behind the mic and be able to convey my message clearly and, hopefully entertain a few folks during the process.
Yeah, for sure. That's cool. I mean, I pretty much feel the same way about podcasting. It's like, here's a medium, right? It's to an extent very, very personal, right? Like it's one person. A lot of the time, it's one person talking to, you're listening to someone speak directly, almost directly to you, and it can be educational, it can be funny, it can be, like an audio drama or something like that. And I mean, I love how you broke it down. Just it's to an extent a performance, right? Because I didn't realize how much writing I was gonna have to do when I started a podcast. I was like, I'm gonna hop on here and just talk, and then it's like, oh, you know what? I need to create an intro. I need to know exactly what I'm gonna say sometimes, and it's like, oh, I might need an outline, or.
Well, yeah, man, and Steven, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's you embracing the professional side of podcasting. I think it's so easy to kind of turn on the mic and speak your truth, and I'm all about that. I know there's a few podcasts out there that just are very just candid, and they just kind of speak their mind, and they're all over the place, and they're normally about 2-3 hours plus. But there's shows like this show, and the way I conduct my shows, and when I coach other clients is being able to embrace the professionalism behind podcasting, understanding that it's a podcast, but you're producing a show. This is a real legit show, and the pros do it. There's outlines, there's script writers, there's production, there's post-production, there's the marketing side of things. So there's a lot of layers when it comes to podcasting. And yeah, you really don't realize some of the skill sets you learn with podcasting. And I think that's one of the underrated skill sets that a lot of really people don't talk about. Is not just podcasting, but when you podcast, you are learning communication skills, how to organize a show, writing, as you mentioned, and knowing how to conduct your message clearly, and again, that's, and growing an audience, right? Setting the stage, growing the audience, and building that community. So there's a lot of like layers with podcasting that I really appreciate and love, and so it makes sense, man, why we're in the mix, right? Because we love doing this.
Yeah, it's such a strange thing. Like, I basically learned it that podcasting isn't a skill; it's a set of skills.
And there you go.
I mean, that's something that I've been like really, really trying to figure out which skills I need to focus on to create, like you said, a professional product.
And you're doing it, man. I mean, I see. I mean, I know people are listening to this on audio, but you have a great podcast studio. You have a great mic. I mean, you definitely look like a professional, Steven. So hats off to you, man.
Yeah,
look
thanks.
at you procaster, you.
So about the Vid Houston, when did that start?
So Vid Houston started about 4 years ago. Yeah, 4 years ago. And I decided to start Vid Houston because at that time I had this ambitious vision to start a YouTube channel. And I've had this love-hate, tug of war relationship with video content. And I was like, I really need to do this thing. And if I need to do this, I need to surround myself. And I always encourage, your listeners, surround yourself around like-minded individuals. Because as you know, Steven, because you've attended a few of our events, it's important to be surrounded by other people that get what you're doing, that understand the challenges, that understands the ups and downs of being a creator. So when I started Vid Houston, I was like, I really want to be surrounded by other video content creators that are way ahead of me and I can learn from, I can lean on, and I can be inspired by, because I really want to start this YouTube channel. Fast forward now, Vid Houston is still active. As a matter of fact, as we are speaking, we have an event tonight. But I just wanted to be around other people and support that accountability, that support. I truly believe that community is the currency. I think community is luxury. Without community, it's really challenging, especially as creators, to really navigate all the emotions and all the different skill sets that we need to learn to be able to produce content online. So I've always been a big believer of community, and Vid Houston, and there's another, obviously Pod Houston is my baby, but Vid Houston is another set of group of creatives that are very passionate about video. And they help me really stay accountable. And even though I've kind of fell off the YouTube wagon a few times, I've been able to kind of lean on to that group and be like, okay, if I need some inspiration, let me go ahead and start putting these events together, because I'm always going to hear a story or somebody's going to share something with me that's going to kind of get me going again. And as you know, Steven, video podcast it's growing now. YouTube has recently announced that they're investing a lot of energy into the podcasting space. So this is going to be some exciting times for us podcasters to be able to use video and audio to leverage that to be able to maximize our content and also grow our audience to different platforms. So I'm really excited about, both communities that we've organized, and Vid Houston has a lot of potential to grow, just as big as Pod Houston has.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the reasons that your content resonated with me was because, like, just how you put it, right? I feel like you started Vid Houston for one of the same reasons that I started this podcast. I just want to get around people who are doing something right that they're passionate about, and the same thing with the events that I've attended. I mean, it's just the same people with kind of not the exact same goals, but who are facing some of the same struggles, who have some of the same questions, and would like some of that support. And I love the just the community around the creative field, especially I want to say especially in podcasting. Ever since I started, just the amount of resources that are out there, just the amount of people who are willing to help, right? Like, they ask for nothing in return. It's just like, hey, I need some advice on this and that, and everyone's always willing to help. And that's one of the things that drew me into wanting to create my own show. And even before I even considered doing a show, I could sense it. Like, I would listen to some podcasts, and they would, hey, we're doing an episode swap with this other podcast. And I was like, that's so cool that, you don't see other creators as competition, really. It's more, hey, they're members of our community.
You nailed it. I mean, you're absolutely right. Podcasting is one of the most supportive, collaborative communities in the creating space, in the creator space. That's one of the things that I also recognized when I went to my first podcasting conference. Geez, this was about 6 years ago. It was called Podcast Movement. in Dallas. It was in Fort, yeah, it was in Dallas. Yeah, it was in Dallas. And it was just so hey, you're one of us. Let's support each other. What do you need? And we definitely have that support. And even with Pod Houston, as you mentioned, you've been to our few events. It's just been very collaborative. Everybody have different goals and objectives, but we're still podcasters, and Indie Podcaster is going to be there for you. As you mentioned, the episode, the promo swaps. There's always just these really cool back end community driven marketing opportunities for us indie podcasters to be able to get on and promote our content out there. And I agree with you, man. It's just one of the most collaborative, most, supportive, communities out there for sure.
As podcasting is growing too, though, I feel like we're going to start seeing some of those rivalries and, people pushing back against one another, just because I feel like I was talking to a comic the other day, and they were telling me how in the stand-up comedy space, when you're starting out, everyone is extremely supportive, and once you start to get good and people start to recognize you, you start seeing them as a rival, because hey, I want my stage time. I think one of the beautiful things about podcasting, right, is that there's not really stage time. One show ends, you can start the other. But what I'm seeing is, especially now that our country has become so politicized and divided, it's no longer, oh, here's another podcaster. It's, oh no, like, here's a podcaster who has different opinions than I do, and don't listen to them. And I think it's kind of a sign that, something's growing, right? But also, it's kind of almost taking away from the friendly environment, and it's unfortunate that I'm seeing it happen with a lot of mainstream platforms. You were at Podcast Movement last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear about the whole Ben Shapiro
I did.
situation? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're living in a different era, man, and there's a lot of layers to what occurred in that incident. And for the listeners who don't know, there was a very right-wing political figure who made himself present at this event. There was some backlash because this individual is also very polarizing, and you love him or you hate him. And was a lot of people were complaining about whether or not they were questioning the conference's integrity and their ethos for allowing this individual to come into this conference. And yeah, man, once you get into that, it's creatives, we're very sensitive. We're also very passionate, and it's no surprise that individuals like that show up, and there's going to be an uproar. And again, man, I can go on and on about that particular topic as far as my own thoughts about it. But I will say that it definitely ruffled some feathers, and of course the conference got a lot of backlash from that. But one of the things about podcasting that's it's been open for everybody is that everybody. Unlike radio, you have to be very careful. Obviously, there's some radios that are a little bit more extreme, but podcasting is a democracy of all voices, of all diversity, and is definitely an amplification of diversity. And you're going to get different opinions. And my take on this, Stephen, is like there's podcasting is on demand. And I listen to what I listen to. I don't get into the politics of things. If it's something that I don't agree with, I just won't listen to it. Does he have or she have every right to be able to do their thing? Absolutely. They have a right to be able to voice it, but doesn't mean that I need to succumb or it needs to ruffle my feathers as far as what I'm trying to do with my community. So again, it depends on how people look at it. But podcasting, again, has given the mic to everybody. And some people are taking the mic and using it for good. And some people are doing it to kind of divide, people. And for whatever reason, if that's their motto, and it's just really unfortunate, but I choose to be on the side of people that are leveraging podcasts to make a positive impact, to be able to really give to the community, for people who are really trying to uplift and spread a message, to share stories, to provide value, and make it their own dent in this world. So again, people, people have different takes on it, but that's what I choose in regards to why I love this podcasting platform. What are your thoughts on it?
I love the way you put it as the democracy of podcasting, right? That's one of my favorite things about it, right? Like, I publish a show, I open up Spotify, like there's Joe Rogan, there's Jordan
Yeah,
Harbinger, there's I don't know, something from Radiotopia, Gimlet Media.
Gimlet, yeah, all the big ones, yeah.
And there's me right next to him, and that's one of the reasons why I want to, like you said, respect the professionalism of the medium, because if I want to put myself out there, that's the standard, right? Like, I want to be as listenable as those guys, because they're obviously doing something right.
The fact that really, as somebody who's been in this space, that really brought a lot of joy to my ears right now, Stephen, what you just said. And let me just echo what you just said is, and I mentioned this, and I said this many, many times. I said this like 4 or 5 years ago. I will tell indie podcasters, you better pro up. And I said, the big dogs are coming. And what ended up happening, my prediction was correct. Big media start coming. Gimlet Media, the big dogs, Spotify, ESPN, NPR. The pros got into our sandbox. And before, we can sound like janky, and our audio was like, we were like sounding like we were recording in a bathroom. But now, podcasting, and even if when I went to the podcast movement recently in 2022, there was a lot of major corporations. Of course, I'm an indie person, so I was like, well, what's happening? How come they're coming in here into our sandbox? And there was a bit of a creative like backlash for me, because I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? Because it's changed completely. And of course, as indie podcasters, we can choose to be salty about it, or to say, okay, they're here, they're playing in our sandbox. But now I'm competing against the Joe Rogans, and I'm competing against the Jordan Harbingers of the world. So what do I have to do as an indie podcaster to be able to play on their level? Because this is an audio platform. So as podcasters, as creators, there's a place where we need to get going, which gives you permission to just, share your message despite the quality. And then there's the other phase of get good at your craft, get good at interviewing, get good at, and developing good taste in audio, and really leveling up your content. And then get great is the last phase, is, get great at what you do. So get going, get good, get great. And the fact that you just said that tells me and tells us, your audience, that you respect the craft, that you respect this platform, and that there's levels to this. And that in order for us to be able to compete as an indie creator, as an indie podcaster, we must acknowledge it, but we also must do something about it. We must be able to provide high quality content through audio, through content output, in topics, etc., interviews, to be able to compete against the big dogs, because we are competing against all the big dogs. And it's a good mindset to have. And it's not so much of like being competitive, like, oh, we got to be better than Joe Rogan, or we got to be better than Tim Ferriss, etc. But it's more of like, there's essentials, especially there's ingredients to having a great quality podcast. And it's audio, right? It's content, right? Context of the content. And then having great conversations if you have an interview-based show. And then, of course, there's the marketing side of it. And that's a whole different, ball game. But those are kind of the three essentials when it comes to great podcasting. And then also really understanding your audience, right? Who is your audience, right? I always ask people when they want to start a podcast, what is the best advice you give for somebody who's starting a podcast? I'm like, well, define what is the podcast about. Like, you have to answer that. What is the podcast about, and who is it for? Okay. And people say, well, the why. And I'm like, yeah, the why is important. I mean, that's a given. You should definitely get started because you're passionate. When people come to me and I ask them, why do you want to start a podcast? And they say, oh, because I want to make money. I'm like, choose a different hobby, bro. Choose a different hobby. This ain't it. This ain't it.
It's not a money maker.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So again, you got to be very, very passionate about doing this, because if you have 10 listeners, you still got to show up for those 10 listeners. And if that motivates you enough to get up from bed and get behind the microphone and record this, then you're going to be in it for the long game and you're going to win. You're going to eventually ultimately win because people are going to build that trust and going to be like, you know what, Steven, he's been doing it for a minute. I like this guy. Like, I've got to know him. And you mentioned earlier about, about how podcasting is the most intimate, platforms. And I agree. Like, video is great. Video is personal, but podcasting is intimate. Like, that's the reason why it's the most intimate platform, medium for creators, because when there's something about when you hear somebody's voice in your earbuds that you like, oh man, I can hear his passion. I can hear his sadness. I can hear his joy. And that's the reason why I love podcasting and believe in the power of voice. So I know I went on a rant there, but I just want to say what you just said right now got me really excited, bro, because that message needs to be embraced by all podcasters. If you're listening to this right now, understand that if you want to start a podcast, know that you're getting into the sandbox of the pros, NPRs, the ESPNs, the Joe Rogans of the world. So get going, but understand that you got to get good at this in order for you to be successful and potentially monetize your podcast. Sorry, man. I went on a rant. See what you did to me, Steven? See what you did to me, man?
Oh, that's the goal, man.
You got me excited, bro. You got me excited.
Yeah, the goal is to get people to rent. I mean, that's what happened to YouTube, right? Like it was all indie creators and famous YouTubers. Like that became a thing. And now, like when you look at the YouTube homepage, who do you see now? Like CNN, Comedy Central. Like they're there, right? And what's great about that is that, I mean, they created the Mr. Beast, they created the Fine Bros, like they really honed in and said, yeah, like we have to up it. I love I love that you brought up the get good. Like I had a friend who, anytime somebody was complaining about anything, just, have you tried getting good?
Now that is some golden advice. Shout out to your friend for saying that. That's right. That's right. That's right. There's levels. I mean, there's, even when I hear people when they launch their podcast, Steven, and you're doing a fantastic job, and I give you props, man. But I tell people, if you're gonna do like an interview based show, like study the greats. Like, who's your favorite interviewer? Oh, it's Howard Stern. Well, study Howard Stern. I think he's a fantastic interviewer. David Letterman's, Johnny Carson, Larry King, Oprah Winfrey, Barbara Walters. I'm spewing these names out because I studied them, because I knew that if I didn't, a lot of us, we didn't go to broadcasting school. A lot of us really are not, some of us are, but I know for the most part, a lot of podcasters with interview-based shows don't have a, formal education in journalism. And this is journalism, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want to start an interview-based podcast, study, just like your friend said, have you tried getting good? Have you tried studying what great looks like? Get good, get decent. But trust me, you're going to be 90% better than everybody else who's starting an interview-based podcast and don't know how to quite interview somebody. There's an art form. People went to school for the art of the interview. And so embrace that. Know there's levels to this. Know there's a craft, and get good. That's a good start.
Yeah, I mean, and I'd like to add, like, you don't start out good either. Like, with anything.
With anything,
I've heard like, if anything you want to do, anything that you want to be successful at, you have to be comfortable with not being great at it at the beginning.
That's right.
You have to suck at it at first in order to get good.
Somebody said one time, I think I heard a speaker say this. He said, success, right? Success. And he's like, you have to suck, success. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's so creative. I'm like, that's so true. And he talked about like embracing the suck. Like, you got to understand that in the beginning, you're not going to be good at this. And you should definitely give yourself permission and grace to be able to kind of get going. Embrace the suck. Know that in the beginning, it's not going to sound great. However, still have that awareness that you want to develop a taste to get good. See, what happens is people get stuck in the suckness, in the suckiness, and they never look to strive to get better. Whereas there are people like yourself and others that are like, okay, this is where I'm at right now. This is a season, but I know that I need to develop the skill set, because eventually by putting in the reps, by developing my taste in what great quality podcasting is all about, I will get there. But let me put in the reps. And I think it all begins with that. I was interviewed on a podcast recently, and we went down the rabbit hole of like podcasting, and we started talking about personal growth. And I'm like, podcasting can be a tool for your personal growth in that it can help you develop, again, that confidence. And people think that I'm very extroverted because I do events and I'm out there, but I'm actually very introverted. I grew up as a shy kid. I had some social skills, being in bands and all that. So I wasn't a complete introvert, but, being on stage helped me kind of turn that on. And I feel like podcasting has helped me with that. And like when I turn on the microphone, I'm able to have conversations with people, and my confidence is also turned up, and I'm able to communicate clearly. And by listening to myself, I'm able to kind of be able to communicate and be like, okay, I need to communicate that more clearly, or I'm still too vague, or I need to, develop that communication skills. And it's helped me, in becoming a better speaker, on stage, behind the microphone. So again, I think there's a lot of personal growth with podcasting. And I love that you're seeing that with you, Stephen, as your journey. You're like, hey, listen, I'm seeing the growth. And I think that's the win that a lot of podcasters don't talk about, is that podcasting is much more than just plugging in the mic and uploading MP3 to an RSS feed and saying, hey, here's my podcast. From an internal standpoint, there's so many things, not from a skill set standpoint, which we talked about, but also from a real deep personal standpoint. There's a lot of things, that you can discover about yourself through podcasting, which is another reason why I love this space.
I love that you brought up the personal, the personal connection. Like a lot of people, like either you're connected to the topic of your show, you're connected to, wanting to socialize and have conversations with people, and there's people that are connected to it just from the broadcasting standpoint. Like myself, I come from a family of musicians, and you
look like a musician, by the way. I was like, he looks like a rocker. He looks like a bass player, a guitar player.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head. I play bass.
Oh, right on. There you go.
Yeah,
there we go.
Bass and drums.
Got it. I know my musician. Right on, man.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like a lot of my family, like they do have a experience in radio and broadcasting and the recording arts. And it's funny because I got that same passion for music, but not so much the talent. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm terrible at it, but, definitely I saw it like, what, I don't think this is going to be what's going to, what I want to put out there first. You know what I mean? And that's another thing about music as well. Is like there's always growth, and pretty much the same type of energy goes into it. It's like you want to get better, you want to get good.
That's right.
And I think that's another thing that helped me even launch this show. At first, I just knew why I wanted to do it, right? And I was actually very intentional in leaving it pretty vague as to what it was gonna ultimately be, because I know it's something that I have to develop. It's something that's gonna turn into the final product. Like anybody listening right now, like the first 50 to 100 episodes, like this is still me practicing. You know what I mean? Like this is not what it's gonna be all the time. Just like with music, right? You pick up a instrument for the first time, you don't know where do I put my fingers? Like when do I hit this note? Like what note do I play? And after a couple months, after a year, 2 years, 3 years, like you're not even gonna think about some of that stuff, And that's one of the reasons that I feel doing music, I was comfortable with not being good at podcasting in the beginning, especially in this day and age where people make it look so easy. A lot of people don't post their content that didn't come out great. They post the one that what is it? The girl that posts the one picture that took 150 pictures. The person who uploaded the song that they've been working on for a year, Mm-hmm. And once that's out there, I feel like people think, oh, like they obviously have a talent that I don't have. They obviously know something I don't. And I want to make it known that, everyone had to learn at some point. Like everyone got good. And somebody told me once, not knowing how to do something is not an excuse to not do it.
Yes. I love that. I love that. Which is the reason why you hit on something. I titled my show, the podcast, No Permission Needed, because it was a declaration to not only myself, but to the creative community to give yourself permission to, as I mentioned, to own your zeal and freedom. And what that meant was I wanted creatives during that time, and the inspiration behind that was my father was a musician, Stephen. And, he passed away when I was 16. And I remember seeing him struggle. He was struggling a lot as a creative. And, it was the whole, notion of the struggling artist. And I even took on that role because, for the bulk of my 20s and even early 30s, I was like, man, when am I going to catch my break? Like, as it's like, oh man, I music was all I knew. And I had big dreams of being signed to a label, and my father did as well. And we both had our own accolades and accomplishments, but we never made that breakthrough. And it took, I know it really hurt my father. And, and also when I went through that pivot into a different world of creativity, it took me a while for me to embrace and to, embrace the new normal, so to speak, because that's music was the thing that I thought was going to be my end goal forever. And, so I had to take a step back. And one of the things that, when I started the podcast was like, look, I want to be able to inspire and empower creatives that they don't have to wait for a record label deal. And essentially that was kind of like the core message, because I was like, how it was back in the days. I was like, oh man, we want to get a record deal. I mean, that was kind of like the golden ticket, right? And I was like, why are we waiting for these freaking gatekeepers to give us permission to validate our music? Why? And there was a bit of passion and anger there. And I was like, I want to help creatives. And during that time, it was, it was still the internet 1.0 and it was still transitioning, but I was seeing people start their own shows and video podcasts and be able to build their own online communities. I'm like, I want to do that. Like, that's dope. Like, that's awesome that people are saying, I didn't go to broadcasting school, but I'm going to start my own show. And they were interviewing high level people and they were just doing their thing on their own platform. And there was this kind of independent ownership, creativity that I fell in love with. And I'm like, I want to dedicate myself to doing that and help other creatives do the same. All creatives want to, support each other. It's one of the most, again, supportive communities. I'm like, I want to do that. And no permission needed, damn it. We don't need permission. We don't need the gatekeepers. We don't need a certificate. We don't need a degree. We need to just say hell yes to the thing that lights us up in life. Say yes to your yes. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's go. Like, let's do it. And that was really the birth of No Permission Needed. So circling back to what you were saying, dude, is like, I love that you were like, look, I'm going to do it. Like, I've been through this, the sucky process of sucking in the beginning as a bass player and being in a band, but I'm going to embrace this new medium, this thing called podcasting. And I'm going to suck at that as well, but I'm going to document it and I'm going to be real with it. And I'm going to share this with the world, and having an understanding that that's not what the end product is going to be like. And there's never an end product, right? We're constantly evolving, right? Without change, nothing evolves. And the fact that you just said, hey, I'm going to just start it. What the hell? And you did. Got microphone, headphones, got your studio, and now you're doing it. And now we're having these conversations. And you and I have, been connected through the podcasting community. And now we're having this conversation. How cool is that, man? That we're living in an era where we can just connect with people that we wouldn't have before. And now we're just having conversations and we're just building friendships and relationships and communities through this thing called podcasting. I mean, it's just amazing and it's super exciting. And this is the reason why I can go on and on about this space, man. So kudos to you, man, for giving yourself permission, Stephen, to make it happen, bro. You did it.
Yeah, man. Thanks. I love that you brought up, just willingness to change. I like that you pointed like willing to pick up the bass and get on stage with a band. And had I not done that, right, I never would have been on stage. I never would have learned what it's like to perform with other musicians. And then now, more recently, what happened was I was on bass, and then sometimes the drummer couldn't make it. I was like, all right, let me get on there and play the backing track basically. And now it's like I found a passion for playing drums, and I feel like that's something that I don't know. I guess my talents, I guess, it lies more where I'm seeing, right. It lies more in the drums, and it's like, had I not picked up the bass, I never would have realized that I'm good at drums. And the same thing with podcasting. Like, had I not started, like you said, like we would have never connected. I wouldn't have made some of the friends that I've made through podcasting. Career opportunities, and just opportunities to share my story on other people's podcasts. And it's like one of the, like you said, one of the most beautiful things about it is pretty much levels the playing field. And we don't need that person to tell you, do this like this or do this like that. You kind of make your own way that works for you and resonates with people. And I think that's amazing.
Oh yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly, man. 1000% agree with you.
What's some of the stuff that you've been working on now?
Yeah, man. So, now that, the COVID has passed, thankfully, and I'm just focusing on building the communities, man. I'm going to be focusing, as you know, you went to the past 2 Pod Houston events. Tonight, as I mentioned, we're doing a Vid Houston event. Just building the community, man. I'm learning. I'm doing more workshops this year. I love teaching as one of my passions as well, especially in the space of podcasting. And I've just been teaching and hosting the events, and also want to get back to my own creator space. I want to relaunch the podcast. I feel like I've been really investing a lot in the community and building that up, that I just kind of, I miss being a creator myself. So I definitely plan on getting back to the podcast, being able to do interviews on the podcast when I relaunch it, relaunching my YouTube channel as well. And I'm just really just inspired more than anything, Stephen, to really get back into just creating and giving back to the community even more. So it's 2023. It's been a very, very productive, fulfilling year so far. We're recording this in March, and I'm looking forward to continuing building and giving more to the creator community here in Houston, but also using YouTube and my podcast to be able to expand my audience to all over the world. So those are the things that are really exciting me right now, man, is live events. It's my jam, and being a creator again. And have you enjoyed the events, man? Well, I mean, what's your take on it now that I have you live? What's been your take of going to the local Pod Houston community events?
It's been great for me. Like, I'm kind of the same. How you said, like, I'm not very like outgoing and extroverted, but I think part of growth, right, is stepping out of your comfort zone. And so I said, it's a very conscious and intentional effort to do these things. And I'm like, whatever the outcome, like I know I'm gonna learn something from it, even if it's stepping out of your comfort zone. And just the both times that I've gone, like I've gotten so much just insight into things I could be doing, connecting with people, and just the ideas, right? Like just being in a room with other creative people just gets your mind going, right? It's like, oh, that's how you're doing this. That's really cool. Like I should try something similar. And that's I've always been a huge fan of that. Like, just bouncing ideas off of people. I'm pretty active in my community church, and we're getting stuff going again, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna be here, supporting. And like you said, like podcasting has opened up so many opportunities, and the leadership reaching out to me like, oh, so we're trying to get our online presence better, like can you help us with our digital marketing? And I'm like, here's some ideas. And it's just like, had I not stepped out of my comfort zone originally and put my voice out there, I wouldn't have learned these skills.
That's right. I mean, there's so many opportunities. And by the way, thank you, man, for sharing your take on the Pod Houston events. And whenever I see you, man, I know you went to the past couple events, and just it's always great to see you, brother. Like it really is, man. You really are a light of joy, and you're very, supportive. And obviously when you reached out to me that you were a listener of the podcast and gave me some a positive review on that. And just, I really do appreciate that because, I never take any listenership for granted. I appreciate everybody who supports, the things that we're trying to accomplish here locally and of course on a podcast platform. But yeah, man, I mean, I'm so happy that you're stepping outside your comfort zone. And again, man, those are just some great words of advice to your listeners is that if you feel a little bit of afraid or if you feel like it's time for you to kind of like you're not growing, I think the first step is for you to kind of lean into the things that scare you, and once you're a little afraid, that means that you're kind of at the edge of something different and something new and something, it could be your breakthrough, and sometimes it is just stepping out and going to a networking event and meeting new people. And you'll be amazed how many, opportunities. I know a lot of podcasters who go to our events, they'll guest on each other's show, they'll give each other marketing ideas and they will, do promo swaps. And there's a lot of really cool things that happen, at the live events. And I know like some of the biggest guests that I've had on my podcast, even early on, were because I attended live events. I was able to meet, some of these big high profile individuals and I was able to meet them in person and shake their hand and say, hey, I would love to have you on the podcast sometime. Absolutely. And, a lot of them tell me like, if I wouldn't have met you in person, I probably wouldn't have given you a time of day, and that's the truth. And honestly, I don't blame them because they get pitched a lot, but there's something about the live interactive, personal relationship, that connection you can make with somebody at a live event that makes it very, very special and engaging. And it opens up so many doors of opportunity. So I encourage your listeners and you, Stephen, to continue, to support your local meetups, continue supporting your local events, because that's where the magic happens. So props to you, my friend. Props to you.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's all about growth and it's inspiring, right? To me as someone who just started, seeing and talking to someone who, oh yeah, like my channel has 50,000 followers. Yet here they are still trying to improve and get better. And like they're still wanting to like move forward. Like a lot of people would say, oh, I'm at XYZ number. Like I'm good here. Like I can keep doing what I'm doing. And I think that's what leads to like stuff failing. Essentially, you start phoning it in, just continuing to push yourself, right? Like once you reach that level that you wanted to get to, like there's always another level. There's always. Just like you said, like the whole community aspect, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, surrounding yourself with supportive people. Like that's the only way. Like that's exactly where I'm at right now at my point in life is like just surrounding myself with people who in one way, shape or form are trying to improve themselves, improve their career opportunities and improve just something. And even that's extended into the media that I consume from podcasts to even music. Like if it's not bringing me anything positive, if it's not encouraging me to do something more with myself, like, I don't need it right now.
Mindful consumption, right? That's what I want to call it.
Yeah, that's it. Because I've always been very, like I said, like I've always been passionate about music, and one of the genres that I liked as of recently is hip hop. And if you're not careful with rap and hip hop, you're gonna consume a lot of garbage. But there is so many great stuff out there. Like just you talking about, stepping out of your comfort zone. Like I can think of so many lyrics that now I basically like they motivate me. What is it?
Oh man, now I gotta ask you, bro. Come on, man. We have to share it live.
I got a couple right off the top of my head. J. Cole said, "If you're scared to take a chance, how the we gonna get rich?"
Oh, I love that.
What was it? Russ. What is it?
Russ is dope.
I'm not trying to butcher it, right? I don't got this. I don't got that. If I do it myself. I don't need him. I don't need her. I do it myself. I'm like, man, like this is
no permission needed. Hashtag no permission needed. That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of garbage out there. I know sometimes hip hop gets the negative connotation, but there's a lot of great content. And I think that's the thing that I've always, I grew up in a household where I listen to all kinds of music. I love rock. I have a really, really good, mix of music. But hip hop to me, maybe because it's a spoken word,
That's it. I think
it's
that's
very
it.
direct. Yeah. Yeah, it's very direct. It's like, I love melodies, and I love the passion and the screams and all that and all that. But even if you listen to Zach De La Rocha, from Rage Against the Machine, if you listen to his lyrics, I'm not sure if you're a Rage fan.
Yeah, that's it.
But when you listen to his lyrics, it's like, oh man, it's poetry. Like it's delivered with so much passion. And yeah, man, hip hop is, I'm glad. And you name, J. Cole is dope. I think he's so underrated. And Russ, I've heard him, and I think he came out with a book too. I've heard him actually on interviews, and I know he's very passionate about like his upbringing and very candid about what he went through and how he, as an indie artist, has, grown to a massive audience. And I have a lot of respect for that, because I think as podcasters, we can relate, as creators, we can relate to that kind of indie mindset of like, F it. We have to give ourselves permission to do the thing, and work hard at it. So I loved it, man. I love it. I didn't know you were a hip hop guy, man. That's cool, man. Very cool.
Yeah,
Extra
a lot of
points
people
for you,
are surprised because I didn't start liking hip hop until like after high school. Because
Okay.
all throughout my when I was in school, it was all rock and metal, and I think I think that their lyricism in that genre, like you said, like you pointed at Zach De La Rocha, he's very very poetic, and there's the style of writing for rock lyrics, it's more poetic. Like it's less direct, and it's stuff that you have to think about,
Decipher a little bit, yeah.
And I think that's kind of what made me really good at language arts when I was in high school. Like creative writing and English, like that was all.
Same here.
I loved it, man. And I remember even there was an instance where I think a teacher was like, "How do you know that word?" Like, I think I said something like, I said, "Oh, so and so, like they're acting like an anarchist or something like that." And the teacher's like, "That's a pretty advanced word for like an eighth grader."
Wow.
And I was like, "Yeah, well, because I mean, the music that I like, it's about, it's civil unrest and stuff like that sometimes, and you get throwing words like that here and there, and you pick up on it.
Yeah.
And lyricism in music, I'm very passionate about really paying attention to what the lyrics are saying. Like sometimes I love a good beat. I love like you said, melodies and riffs and whatnot. But if I'm not resonating with what the lyricist is saying, it's not for me.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way, man. Language arts, writing was definitely my jam, and I think that's the reason why I always been, I always gravitated towards the spoken word and lyricism. So, yeah, man, that makes sense.
It's another reason I didn't want to go into music when I started doing it, because I spent about a year trying to put something together, and I was like, I'm gonna go crazy trying to get this right. And at least with podcasting, I'm a little more forgiving of myself. But because I think it's just more. I think even the audience is a little bit more forgiving,
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, that's why I tell people whenever they get into podcasting, they want it very polished and all the edits and post production. And I get it. I mean, I understand it's still show and you want to produce and you want to take all the fluff out and whatever. And I mean, I get the editing process. I do, because writers edit, right? And but there's something about just having a rough, candid conversation that podcasting can bring you, that I actually admire a lot more versus a polished NPR interview where it's just, all these little transitions and cuts and it's just so clean. Even when I see the speakers, it's usually the speaker on stage that is a little bit raw. They're dropping ums and ahs every now and then. They're not polished. They don't have a framework for their presentation, that I prefer more versus somebody who's very polished and, they got everything all lined up, and have all the flash. So, yeah, podcasting definitely brings that rawness, to this platform.
Man, it's funny how you said that about the speakers. I mean, coming from a church background, I've been at like a church service where the preacher came on and it was bam, 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 this, that, boom, show's over. And I'm just like, I mean, that was really well put together and like it was really in time and whatnot. But I'm like, I don't know, man, I didn't feel it.
Yeah, right, absolutely, no, for sure.
I mean, it would have been great for a video.
Right, exactly, right. I mean, you did all your jump cuts right there. I mean, that's perfect. Well, it comes back to like even like the that's the reason why I love like even like I was listening to more of the alternative hip hop and even like punk rock. I think that's why the reason the punk rock scene was so fascinating was because it was just so raw, and they weren't the best guitar players or the vocalists, but it was just so raw, intentional about their message and just playing music and putting that into their art that just it made it really appealing. And sometimes the people just want that, and I feel like we're living in that era right now where podcasting there's a lot of polished, well, overly produced podcast. And I hear them all the time in the top 20 on Apple, podcasts, but there comes every now and then where I hear a podcast where it's just a good conversation. And I'm like, oh man, that's just so much soulful. That's so much better than this NPR interview. Nothing against NPR if you're listening, but I don't like the, hey, welcome. And today we're going to be speaking. After a while, I'm like, I don't need all that. But again, everybody has their different take. There's a different, audience for every podcast. And that's just, I like the rawness, man.
Yeah, definitely.
I like the raw and uncut,
To this day, one of my favorite live concert videos is actually Rage Against the Machine.
Oh,
they're like in a really small record shop, like playing.
Oh, I've seen it.
And it's a super grainy camera. My favorite part of that is when at the very end, the very last song, the one that everyone's waiting for, right? Bulls on Parade. Not Bulls on Parade. Killing in the Name. Everyone's waiting for it. The microphone gives out. And he's tapping on the mic trying to figure out what's going on. But the beautiful thing about it is the people already knew the song, and everybody was singing along, and I was like, that's amazing.
Those magical moments.
I was like, wow, right? Like you can hear the feedback in the amplifiers, and the camera is grainy. Like it's obviously not set up for a live show, much less a recording, but it's something about it, right? Like they captured something amazing.
That's special. That's special, and I think that's the type of, magic that, even with us having this conversation, like there's things we can look back on our conversations like, oh man, that was special. I said something that I never thought of, or Steve made me think about something that I didn't think of. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people, when they get into the podcasting space, whether as a guest or even behind the microphone, I remember just hosting and interviewing. And I was like, man, my whole objective is to be able to pull something out of my guests that we can really have a deep conversation about and go deeper about and just vibe and kind of go there, and and these are individuals that I would never have spoken to ever, that was the first time. I would never do like any discovery calls. That was the first time I actually, spoke with them. And then next thing you know it, man, after the interview, we became BFFs, like best friends. We're like, oh man, that's crazy. But because I was able to go there and be able to kind of really immerse myself in the conversation, and be interested, not interesting. And that was always something that those magical moments that I would have with my guests. So yeah, man, it's a beautiful thing. I think we're able to have that opportunity to do that with this medium we call podcasting.
I think that's one of the important things, right? Is being interested. I was talking about this the other day to one of my guests. Like it's weird because I have people now hitting me up, right? Hey, I want to be on your show.
Oh yeah,
and it's difficult telling people no. Like, it's like, oh yeah, because I do this and this and that, and I'm just like, I don't know if you're a fan of the show or you're trying to promote your stuff. And I mean, I have no issue with promotion, right? But it's like, are you trying to like push something on me that I've never heard of your product, you know what I mean? Like I don't know that my audience has heard of your product. And I think that's something that I like to do with my guests is, even if I've never met the person before, if even like, I don't know what it is, like even messaging back and forth for a little while, you can really get like the energy if someone is like genuinely interested, or if they're just trying to self-promote on any medium possible. And like you said, when you make the genuine connection with a guest, I mean, it's beautiful. Like I have friends now, like in Germany and the UK. Yeah. It's like if I never would have put myself out here to do this thing, that never would have happened. Like I talked to one of my guests. They're from Canada, and the other was like last month. It was a tornado here, in Pasadena, not where I stay, but I guess it made international news, and I got messages right from Canada like, "Hey, are you and your family okay?" I was like, "Wow, like that's special."
It's special. That's very special.
And I'm always
Very
blessed
special.
too, because I don't know what it is. It's like nervousness, or I'm just trying to make sure everything is in order during the interview. And I sometimes get off and I'm like, I don't know that I talked about anything, or I don't know that that we touched on anything. And then when I'm doing my editing, I'm listening back and I'm like, this was amazing. Like I leave the actual interview feeling like, okay, it's over with. And then when I listen to it in editing, I'm just like, wow, like this couldn't have gone better.
Welcome to the club, man. That's how it is sometimes, and but you're doing a fantastic job, man. And again, I'm just so proud of the work that you are putting into this podcast, and just your dedication to obviously being a loyal member of Pod Houston and Vid Houston, and just being a very just a supportive creator, man. And I really do appreciate that. I see that, acknowledge it, man, and I appreciate it more than you know. So thank you, brother.
Thank you so much for joining me, man. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. Hopefully we could do it again.
Before you go, where can people find your stuff?
Where can people find me? So you can find me at ozeal.net, which will be rebranded very soon, but you can sign up for my newsletter for the updates. And then, of course, if you're a podcaster, if you're interested in starting a podcast, just want to be around some amazing podcasters like Steven, head over to Facebook and join our Facebook group. And just, you can do a search. Pod Houston should pop up. And of course, if you're a video content creator, Vid Houston as well on Facebook. And then Ozeal Media is another one, Ozeal Media.com. And that's where I got some coaching and some other things that I got going on. So those are the two platforms. Let's connect.
That was really a great time, and I cannot wait to do it again. Links to all of Ozeal's content are in the description. Check out Pod Houston and Vid Houston if you'd like to learn more about these communities, or even if you're interested in starting a podcast or YouTube channel. If you like this conversation and would like to help grow the show, feel free to leave an honest rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on right now. You can also show your support by following TFX Pod on both Instagram and Facebook. And if you'd like to take it a step further, the best way to help grow the show, show your support, and spread the word is to share it with friends, family, anybody who you think might enjoy the show as much as you do. Because actions speak louder than words, and talk is cheap. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.